Hello, welcome to Steven Shinder Reviews in video form, continuing Chucktober with day 19, talking about Chucky Season 2, Episode 3, Death on Denial, which was written by Alex Delisle and Kim Garland. So, Kim Garland was one of the writers on Season 1, but Alex, new to the show. We'll get to Alex's credits in just a moment. But this aired October 26th, 2022, and was directed by Don Mancini. And it makes sense that Don would be the one to direct this one, considering that, it, maybe he wanted to be, behind the camera for this episode that explores a bit more like um, non binary and those types of um, concepts are being explored in here. LGBTQ plus related stuff. So Alex Delisle was a writer on Orphan Black Echoes, one episode of that, and 51 episodes of Fear the Walking Dead from 2018 to 2022. I think there was someone else who also wrote for Fear the Walking Dead who's also on the show, and also Orphan Black Echoes. So there's a bit of overlap in the writers, I guess. Maybe it's this person knew that person type thing. Also wrote 10 episodes of a podcast series called Marvel Wastelanders Black Widow. I've never heard of that. And a 2013 short called Puppy Dreams. This was quite a special episode, as Chucky calls it at the beginning. It sort of opens up with Chucky with his own talk show type thing. So this feels kind of in the vein of Chucky's Family Vacation or whatever that short on the Seed of Chucky DVD, I think it was called. And also in line with Chucky by the Fireside at the end of Chucky season 1. So it's really weird that it's like, how would these segments fit in universe? But if they're out of universe or non-canon, we're just supposed to, just roll with it. And in the end, I do like this sort of thing because it does clarify details that don't get completely explained within the episode itself. So I remember when this season aired, we had season 2, episode 2, end with the tease of, Glenn and Glenda have arrived, and we had to wait 2 weeks before we finally got that. But it was worth the wait, seeing how all of this stuff played out. So Glenn and Glenda arrive and they wonder if that's blood that Tiffany is cleaning up, and they only know their mother as Jennifer Tilly. They don't know well, at least one of them does, but yeah. So Tiffany slash Jennifer Tilly. What do I even call her during this recap? Like, I don't know. She says, "Oh, it's corn syrup. My PR team wants me to have violence on my social media," and she like takes a selfie. Um, and the body of the detective is in the coat closet, so she's trying to hide that. And then it turns out that there's well, these are also given act titles. So Act 1 is titled Glenda Poses an Incommodious Question. That's after we get the Chucky title card, after we get this cold open, which I think showed the title Death on Denial, a Jennifer Tilly mystery. So I don't know. I guess I do we call her Jennifer Tilly in this? I don't know. I keep forgetting to mention what the Chucky title cards have. So the one for episode 2 had these photos of Nika and I think Chucky as well. Episode 3, it was made up of crosses, and here it's made up of TV sets that show Chucky on the screen. So kind of fitting with that whole vibe of, the talk show thing, I guess. But we also get TV stars in this episode. So I think this is in Act 1. It turns out that, Jennifer Tilly, I guess we'll call her, wanted to. Oh, let's call her Tiffany. Jeez. I wish our names were so dissimilar from each other. I hate this. But she wanted to just have time with the twins, and the twins notice that she's been very recluse, holed up in her house the past year, and drinking and whatnot. But they hold their own surprise party, and so there are a few um, movie slash TV star friends here. We got well, there's Jeeves, who's like from this improv thing, and also I think a security guard. I'm not really sure if he like yeah, some of that I was kind of confused about. But we also have the actor who played Ralphie on The Sopranos, and Ralphie was a character I really hated. Like, without spoiling anything, he does something that's so unforgivable. Like, the people on the show are awful people, but he goes like so over the edge, and it's just, yeah, it's super terrible. So yeah, that's Joey Pantoliano, and they call him Uncle Pants, which I thought was kind of funny and plays into a little gag that happens later. There's Gina Gershon, so they call her Aunt Gina. And there's also Sutton Strack from Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. Gina, from what I understand, well, I had to be reminded of this. She played Jughead's mom in the show Riverdale, um, which is interesting because Glenn and Glenda are played by someone who was on The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, which eventually had a little crossover with Riverdale. And Riverdale is a show that I have a complicated relationship with. Like, I watched the whole show, but it was so frustrating how super ridiculous it would get. Like, I feel like I would have more respect for it if every now and then the characters turned to the camera and said, "Yes, this is ridiculous, and we know this is ridiculous," despite how serious we make all this seem. Um, but yeah, it just went off the rails. But yeah, Lachlan Watson plays both Glenn and Glenda, and they are non-binary. Apparently, both dating the same guy, someone named Paul. It's complicated because Glenn and Glenda look at each other as siblings, but they are actually the same person, but their soul is split in two and spread into two different bodies. And the reason that Act One is titled "Glenda poses an incommodious question," I think that's a word that they use, incommodious, or is it incommodious? Um, oh yeah, so maybe incommodious because it says it means inconvenient. Um, so yeah, Glenda says that they have had nightmares of, um, you know, a young woman getting set on fire, and it was their fault. And there's also the voice of a man who's encouraging her. And those of us who've seen Seed of Chucky, which we see a little bit of in the recap here of, Glenda the doll saying, "Sometimes I feel like I'm a boy, sometimes I think I'm a girl," and type thing. And the person that Glenda's referring to is the production assistant, or Jennifer Tilly's assistant, I guess. So Glenda has been having those nightmares and wondering if there's trauma of something that they don't remember. Their mom is trying to sweep it under the rug. It kind of raises some questions. Do Glenn and Glenda not remember the early years of their childhood? Like, it seems like something happened that made them lose their memories of what they did when they were a doll, and also what happened in that epilogue where Chucky's arm arrives in a package, and for Glenn, and Glenda witnesses, Tiffany um, getting rid of. Yeah, there's some kind of confusing stuff about all that. I guess we're supposed to assume that they the memories faded over time. Maybe the more time spent in these bodies for whatever reason, maybe because the bodies were so young, babies when when the soul was put into them. Maybe for some reason it's more difficult to maintain memories after a while. I guess that's how I'm trying to sort of headcanon it. It doesn't really get completely explained, so it's a little frustrating, but you kind of just roll with it, I guess. Like they want to focus on other things going on in this episode. But yeah, we got the surprise party. There's a cake that says 18 on it because Glenn and Glenda are 18, so which makes sense. Seed of Chucky took place 2004, and I guess this is in November still because it's after Halloween. And Tiffany blows out the candles, which um, feels weird. I kind of wondered if this maybe symbolizes that Tiffany tries taking control of the decisions of her children throughout their lives and doesn't really give them what they want or whatever. Like they don't get to blow out the candle to make their wish. So Jeeves is being a jerk. Um, yeah, and asking like, "What even are you?" to Glenn and Glenda, and so they explain that they're non-binary, and um, the others who are present are defending Glenn and Glenda, saying that language evolves because Jeeves does a whole, "Oh, they them," like that means multiple people. It doesn't make sense, that stupid retort. Well, it's so ridiculous of a defense because over many years we have been using they as a singular. If you don't know the gender of for example, someone who uh, I don't know, someone who uh, made food, then you might ask, "Oh, what did they make?" Type thing. That was just off the top of my head, but yeah. So Jeeves is being a jerk, which makes it all the more satisfying when he ends up uh, getting murdered, and this becomes the whole crux of this murder mystery that this turns into. Tiffany finds Jeeves dead by the bedroom where she's been holding Nika captive, and she'd even told him that it's where her girlfriend and husband are. Like, that's the secret that she's hiding. Um, so yeah, he's found dead, and then Act Two is titled "Murder." You say, and then Tiffany pretends that she added this murder mystery element to the twins' party. There's a little bit of Gina trying a terrible accent, trying to be in character and play along with the whole thing. Glenn and Glenda do convincing English accents, and they are Anglophiles, which makes sense given their background. In Seed of Chucky, we saw that as a doll, they spent time in England. Um, and there's something else I was going to touch on. I don't remember if Glenn and Glenda ever use the word I. I think they maybe always, or maybe for the most part, say we. And I don't think this is necessarily a non binary thing. It's more like Glenn and Glenda is one person divided among two. And so sometimes they feel like they have to speak for both of themselves because they feel like one person. Glenda had even told Tiffany, like, we've never felt whole. Like, what? Why is that? And yeah, like, there's some interesting things touched upon here. It makes you think about how, of during Seed of Chucky, they were trying to figure out who they are, and they have this split personality type thing. And Tiffany thought that splitting the soul into two different people might make things better, but it seems like they would feel more whole if they were one person. And I think this also parallels the whole thing of, people struggle to, figure out their gender identity and what they would prefer, and um, thinking about how they um, are seen and what they're born as, and which, like, what type of person they'd prefer to be. Like, I think there's all sorts of interesting things going on here. It's just kind of strange that it's done through the lens of, oh, being one doll is the ideal thing to be. Like Chucky, in Seed of Chucky, accepted that he is a doll. Like, he was used to one body, but then realized that the new body he has is who he really is. And even thinking back to the internal conversation that Nika had with Chucky, Chucky is presented as a doll, not as Charles Lee Ray, a human body. And you could say that maybe that's just how Nika perceives Chucky, but I think part of it could also be that's just how Chucky sees himself, how he prefers to see himself, and how he prefers to be seen. So yeah, I think there are parallels there, and yeah, there's all sorts of uh, some. I'm trying not to like fumble whenever I talk about these sort of things, so you'll have to forgive me if it seems like I'm stumbling around or whatever. Um, but yeah, Tiffany is trying to figure out who was it that killed Jeeves. She sniffs the bottle of, I think it's champagne, and she smells arsenic. Um, and someone asks, "How do you know what arsenic is?" Oh, I forgot to mention, her sister Meg Tilly is also here. She shows up, and I had to look this up. Meg is Tiffany's younger sister by 2 years. They even make it a plot point where I think a couple of the characters are confused about whether she's the older sister or younger sister. And Meg mentions that Jennifer has been distant for 24 years, so that would be 1998. And she says, ever since you did that Chucky movie. And this confused me a little bit, but thinking back to what Devin said in the season 2 premiere, where he's like, The Bride of Chucky, remember that movie? I think that Chucky Goes Psycho was not the only Chucky movie that Jennifer Tilly did in this universe. I think that was a sequel to Bride of Chucky, which was a movie that might have got into production really soon after the events of Bride of Chucky took place, and maybe it got released a year later or something. But what's strange is that would have been before Jennifer Tilly had her soul switched with Tiffany's. So it seems like she got distant with Meg even before the soul switch. Like, maybe she got really in character as Tiffany for Bride of Chucky and embraced the stardom of that. Maybe she like really blew up in stardom and sort of ignored her sister, neglected to get back in touch with her. And then by Seed of Chucky, she feels washed up as she's doing the Chucky Goes Psycho movie and wants other types of roles. So yeah, I do wonder if maybe there was a mix up in the writing of the episode, but this is kind of how I rationalize in my head, like how things went down. Um, so yeah, they're doing this murder mystery thing, and because Nika is missing from the bedroom as well, and before the commercial break, we see Nika's silhouette and in a window of a different room, and someone is standing behind her and moving her. Um, there's also this app that Tiffany has that helps her keep tabs on the security of the place. So yeah, that's the end of Act 2, I believe. But yeah, Act 3 is titled A Plethora of Suspects. And, Jeeves was such a jerk to pretty much everyone. Apparently, he and Sutton used to date or have a thing, and he said, "If I'd known you were gonna be famous, I would have stayed with you." So just saying these really terrible things, and there's that, and the stuff he said to the non-binary twins, and the stuff he said about gender and all that stuff. And there's he also said an Italian slur to Joey after fanboying about The Sopranos. Which, side note, this episode, along with the fourth episode of She-Hulk, which fourth episode of that, fourth episode of Chucky season 2, these came out the same year and spoiled huge plot details about The Sopranos. And there's this whole debate online about whether it's a huge thing because the show had been around for 25 years, but not everyone had HBO, and I only just watched The Sopranos like a year before any of this. So yeah, like that. It's just a side tangent, I guess. But yeah, lots of suspects, and I'm trying to remember what else happened in Act 3. I guess that's where the bulk of the accusations took place. Maybe I was getting the end of Act 2 and end of Act 3 confused. But yeah, there's all this back and forth, and um, everyone's wondering like what exactly happened, and they think that Jeeves is pretending that he's dead, that he's acting, and because Tiffany told all of them this, and there's a debate about whether it's convincing or not. Someone says, "I can see your eyes moving." Um, I said debate, but it wasn't like a huge debate. I guess just like side comments and stuff. Act 4 is titled "An Occurrence from 3 months ago." So this takes us back in time. I guess this would be August 2022, which is, Glenn and Glenda visit their mom, and she's watching Liar Liar then as well and drinking, and she just passes out. It's really sad, this life that Tiffany has chosen. So the twins decide to explore and see what's in that secret room that Tiffany keeps closed off. I think they use some sort of pin or something that they got from Aunt Gina and are able to unlock it. And so they find Nika, and it's Nika as herself. And apparently, she already knows about Glenn and Glenda, which makes sense given that Chucky is within her psyche and they talk to each other. And they want to help Nika to escape. I don't know why it takes them 3 months to try to go through with this plan. Like that was kind of wasn't clear to me. I don't know if it's like maybe the security of the place, or maybe they think like during a party Tiffany wouldn't suspect that they had something to do with this. Like I don't really know. But they are caught up on Nika's whole thing. Well, most of it about how uh, she she has nobody and she doesn't want to go back to the mental institution. So they know that their mom um, is a terrible killer, and so they leave the room, and then Glenda comes back is like, oh, I forgot this, like forgot their knife, and accidentally stabs themselves in the fingertip, and this causes Nika to see a little bit of blood, and we know that this triggers her into changing back to Chucky, and so we get a little reunion between Chucky and Glenda, and Chucky says, "You're more beautiful than I thought, or than I imagined, or something." Because you gotta remember, even if you do take the epilogue at the end of Seed of Chucky into account, it was just Chucky's arm, and it got, it encountered, it was Glenn who opened the package, and we don't really see Glenda interact And who knows where the rest of Chucky was at that point. But I get the sense like you could maybe piece together a little backstory in your mind, like I have. Chucky says that their mom kept him from them. Like their mom had said that their dad abandoned them, and it leaves a hole in the heart or in the chest or whatever. And Chucky says this really weird comment saying, "Can I see?" And it does remind me of the hole in Trevor's chest in the previous episode. So maybe it's a little reminder of that. But yeah, it was just kind of weird. Um, so they've been under the impression that they had a dad who abandoned them, but Chucky says he wanted to stay, and their mom kept them apart. So even though Tiffany was working with Chucky during Curse and Colt, I think she probably had all these attempts to keep Chucky away from the kids, like maybe lock Chucky up in that room that Nika is in. Um, maybe Tiffany found Chucky during that birthday party at the in the Seed of Chucky epilogue, and then locked him up there, and didn't want to put that on the kids. Didn't want to traumatize them, and maybe she even hypnotized them into forgetting some of their memories. Maybe she got hypnotist or something. I don't know. We've seen that hypnosis is a thing in the Chucky universe, like in Cult of Chucky with Dr. Foley. So I don't know. In Hollywood, there could be like some famous hypnotist who, uh, yeah. So I don't know. Chucky also calls Glenda shitface and says, "I always called you that affectionately." And that was a bit strange as well, because in Seed of Chucky, shitface was originally the name given to them by the that ventriloquist guy in England who kept them in a cage for like 6 years. So I don't, I wouldn't see that a name as like an affectionate thing, even if Chucky did adopt it or whatever. And I mean, in any case, it's not a very good name to call someone. So there's some messed up stuff going on here. But it seems like Glenda uh, maybe wants to help their dad. And so we cut back to the present day, and um, oh, actually, I think before this flashback is when we saw Glenn hiding out with Nika in a room that is separate from the rest of the house that the app knows about. Like the app with Tiffany's security system does not know about this room that they're in. So yeah, after the flashback, it shows Glenn uh, rolling Nika out, on a wheelchair, and they get to the elevator, and there we see that oh, there was something else that happened in Act Three. Okay, so in Act Three, yeah, sorry, it's coming back to me. I watched it this morning, but then had other things I needed to take care of. During Act Three, Tiffany, who is Jennifer Tilly, goes to her room and encounters Gina, who apparently has been having a thing on the side with Jennifer Tilly for years. This is explained a bit better in one of the wraparound segments. And Gina is trying to seduce Jennifer Tilly in this moment, but of course her mind is occupied, worried about other things, about Nika and about being having all that discovered. So after all that, Jennifer Tilly, is also confronted by Joey, who, his pants are around his ankles, and, tying back to that whole joke about pants and like his last name and stuff. And he says, "I don't mind you and Gina being a thing, but I'd like to watch." And so, like, all this weird stuff going on, and yeah, it's a whole thing. Like, some of this is really campy and ridiculous, and I think that some viewers were not really into this episode pivoting more toward humor than to horror. I mean, there is horror comedy in the other episodes of this show, but I think the TV show, it kind of brings the franchise outside of a box. You know, when you have to tell the story within movies, you have a time limit and you have to keep it within a certain framework, a certain structure. And so it kind of feels like the TV show in a way. It's like, you know, you have this fans having this idea of like Chucky should be horror, but it should also be funny. And some people think it can be one or the other, but not too much overlap. And that's a very binary way of thinking. So in a way, it's like this show allows the franchise a bit more freedom and to tell different stories in different episodes and to be outside of that binary. You know, it could be whatever it wants to be depending on what the episode calls for. It could be more horror, it could be more comedy, it could be a unique blend of the two. So, yeah, it's interesting the freedom that this TV show gives the franchise. There is also a part of me that wonders how different would the Nika storyline have been if this had remained in films. Like I imagine it would have been very different. We might not have had this party with all these celebrities. Maybe it would have been darker. Like would the Glenn and Glenda stuff have been touched on? Like I don't know. It's an interesting thought experiment that I kind of wish I could step into an alternate universe and see what that would have been like. But I also like that the show allows for more things to happen. So, getting back to the further events that I was getting to, Glenn and Nika get to the elevator. When it opens, it shows Joey, who has been shot in the head. So there's blood there. Nika has another one of her moments where she turns into Chucky. Glenda uses, I think, like a trophy or something to knock out Glenn, saying that Glenn would not have agreed to mom getting killed because Glenda and Chucky are in on this plan to kill Tiffany. And Glenda also gives Chucky slash Nika these metal arms, which I think have hooks on them or something, which allow them to, uh, you know, Nika or Chucky to hold a gun. And we find out the origin of this gun later, but when they get to the rest of the people at the party, Nika points a gun at Tiffany. There's a lot of drama here, and there's the rest of the people here still think this is part of the murder mystery, like a fake murder mystery. And they're like, wait, so it was this person we never met? That's not really fair. It kind of reminds me of a Bob's Burgers episode where Linda says, "Oh, it wasn't me who committed the murder," and then at the end of the murder mystery thing, she's like, "It was me all along. It's a twist." And they're like, "No, wasn't. That's not a twist. That's just lying," which is not good. But anyway, I kind of like the shades of that. Um, Tiffany is almost shot, but turns out the gun is out of bullets. I think this is during Act Five, wherein the mystery is elucidated. Yeah, and so um, something happens. Oh yeah, Tiffany smacks Nika slash Chucky in the face. So now it's no longer Chucky mode, but Nika mode. And so Nika tries rolling herself out of the house, like going as fast as she can, you know, down the driveway to the gate. Tiffany's trying to use her phone to close the gate. Glenda is running after Nika, like still trying to help Nika escape, but really wanted Tiffany dead. So that part of it went south, but still wants to help Nika out in her ordeal. So Nika makes it past the gate. Glenda climbs over it, being somewhat behind. Before Glenda left, Glenn regained consciousness and wanted to stay with their mom, saying, "I can't just leave mom like this." And Glenda is like, "Fine, but ask her about Tiffany Valentine, because that identity has been kept a secret to the twins for years. They know their mom as Jennifer Tilly, the famous actress. So I think splitting up the twins here was a smart choice because it allows for them to experience different things and find out different things. But yeah, Nika and Glenda go to this van. I think it's a van, some sort of car. And in the driver's seat is Kyle. So Kyle had survived the explosion at the end of season one. And this is a nice reveal. And Nika and Kyle meeting each other for the first time officially. And Glenda says Glenn is not coming. So they drive off, and then we get the wraparound with Chucky's talk show, and he has a guest, WWE superstar Liv Morgan, and they talk about who committed the murder, and we see a flashback of Glenda putting the strychnine, I think it was, in the champagne bottle, and so that's what killed Jeeves. And then they talk about like uh, who killed Joey, and so we get a little flashback of the gun was a gift from Gina to the twins, or maybe just to Glenda, because I think it was Glenda who asked for a gun, and Gina um, packed that up. And since Gina knew about the gun, she was able to use it against Joey. She asked Joey if he loves Jennifer, and he hesitates, but ultimately says yes, and that's enough for Gina to kill Joey. So that's a mystery that's solved. So there were some questions during the episode, and I like that this wraparound ties up those loose ends. And Chucky pretends to be upset that uh, Tiffany was with someone else for years. That someone else being Gina, and does this hug with Liv Morgan, and she's like, "You love to be hugged," and then that's a little thing, and then we see a clip from I think a podcast where Liv Morgan says, "I wish that I could be killed by Chucky." I guess like star in something Chucky related and just be killed by him. And Liv is like, "I was just kidding," but then Chucky ends up killing Liv and also saying the 10 allotted F bombs, because apparently there's a limit of like 10 F bombs are allowed per episode, which I don't know if this show takes full advantage of, but it could get repetitive if they just feel forced and out of place. But here it worked for the gag of Chucky stabbing and saying the F bomb so many times. And then he says, "And next time I'll be back, um, striking terror to those damn kids," or whatever he says. So the next episode will be back with Trio and I guess Nadine as well over at the school. And I think that episode also cuts back and forth between that storyline and the stuff going on with the twins and uh, well, definitely Glenn and Tiffany. I do remember stuff there. So yeah, I'm trying to. I think that's pretty much all the stuff I want to touch on in the episode. I like that it picked up on the Glenn and Glenda storyline. I thought it was handled pretty well, and it was a nice payoff for those waiting since Seed of Chucky to see what actually became of them. Although there's still questions unanswered, and I know that in the later episodes there's still things that are unanswered, but I guess I'll talk more about those when we get to them. So overall, this was a really enjoyable episode. I think potentially the best one of this season. Definitely the best one of this season so far on this rewatch, in my opinion. Um, yeah, like it just touches on some interesting issues and also catches us up with the family, the twins and Tiffany and her life as Jennifer Tilly. We got to see what that life is kind of like, the people that she knows. And yeah, so I'm really curious to see if I end up thinking if any of the later episodes are better. But yeah, I think this is a solid 8 out of 10 for me. Um, and yeah, like, I don't know, some people might think it's strange that I put this above Bride of Chucky, but like I said, that third act of Bride of Chucky kind of loses me a bit. Whereas here, I felt like I was entertained pretty much throughout most, if not all, of the whole thing. So yeah, I'll be back tomorrow talking about the next episode, which is titled. I had it right in front of me. Um, okay, Doll on Doll. So thanks for tuning in to Steven Shinter Reviews in video form for Chucktober, and I'll see you all next time.